Guys, the revolution has begun. Notion has released the API. Probably in social media you have already heard about this, but what does this really mean? API stands for Application Programming Interface, and this is basically a feature that allows apps to send data from one app to the other. So this means that Notion is no longer going to be a standalone application in which we are going to input our data manually. Now other apps can be the trigger to input data inside of our Notion workspaces. So in this video, I'm going to give you some ideas that I've had to start implementing these early integrations that we have. But to give you a little sneak peek, we will be able to synchronize our Google Calendar with Notion, to send tasks by email to Notion also, to save our most retweeted tweets or whatever we choose inside of our workspace, even to track our Stripe payments. We can do a ton of things. So right now, the main integrations that are available are Zapier, Automation.io, and Typeform, but much more are going to start coming, because this means that now individual developers can develop their own integrations for their own applications. But the fact that they have launched with Zapier and Automate.io means that now we have at our fingertips more than 3,000 applications, 3,000 that we can connect to our Notion workspaces to automate all kinds of data transfer. But there is a caveat. As we can see here, Zapier has a free option, but here we will be just limited to 100 tasks per month. And to give you a little bit of perspective, every time that we perform one automation, this is going to count as one task. And here we only have single step automations. So this means that we can just create automations that is a trigger plus an action. So if this, then this. But we cannot continue that flow. So this is going to really affect to the complexity of the automations that we are going to be building. And then the next payment plan is $20 per month if we pay annually. If not, it's $30 per month. And this allows 750 tasks per month. And we will be already having multi-step subs. So if you are now screaming at these prices, think, one, we are barely paying for Notion. So I think most of us are not paying for it. Second, this is going to save us a lot of time. So if you are using Notion for business, this is already a very good investment. And three, and I left it for the end, there is a cheaper option, which is Automate.io. In their free plan, they allow for 300 tasks instead of 100 in Zapier, and their personal plan is $10 per month with 600 monthly actions. So my recommendation will be, if you are just using this for Notion, then it seems that Automate.io, it will be a good solution. And there is one difference as of right now, May 14. Automate.io can use as a trigger whenever we update one database. But in the case of Zapier, the only trigger that Notion can start, by trigger I mean the way that we are going to start our automation, is just by creating one new entry in a database, so no with updates. But I'm going to explain later why this is not important for me. Okay, so how do we actually make this run? We'll have to go to our settings, and here we will be able to see the integrations panel. Here I already have my own integration, but you will be prompted to create a new integration. You will go to Notion page and you will create this new integration. You can name it for whatever you want. I call mine DanielBot. I will leave in the description of the video the FAQ that Notion has provided and the guide on how to actually do this. And once we have created this integration, the only thing that we will have to do is to allow this new bot, in my case, to have access to the databases that we want to use for connecting them to other apps. So in the case of my tasks database, we can see here that in the share button, I already have my bot over here. So this means that whenever I go to Zapier, I will be able to access this database, but not the rest of databases that I have in my workspace. And if you want to see the integrations that you already have created, you can always go to notion.so/myintegrations. And here you will be able to create a new one or to view the integrations that you have already created. Now, as I said, as we are able to hook our Notion with apps like Zapier, which is going to be the one that I'm going to be using because I was already using it for my business, here we can see a list of all the different ideas and automations that we can start creating, connected to MailChimp, Google Sheets, to Calendly, Airtable. The possibilities honestly are endless, even with Trello, with other task management apps. So Now I'm going to show you the ones that I have already built and that I have already tested. And I'm going to explain you what works and what doesn't, and which are the limitations. So the first integration that I just dived right in order to create was to synchronize my Google Calendar with Notion. Why? Because if you have followed some of my videos, you know that I like to schedule my tasks within Notion, and I have a view in which I have two columns, the list of tasks that I have pending and my calendar. So for me, it will be extremely helpful that in that view, I can also see the events that I have for the week. So I can schedule my tasks taking those into account. So therefore, I want that whenever a new event is created in Google Calendar, he also appears in my calendar view. And as you can see, this app is very, very easy. The trigger will be a new event in Google Calendar. So we will come here and choose Google Calendar as the app to use, and the trigger is going to be new event. We will choose the Google Calendar account and set up the trigger, selecting the email that we are going to be using. And that is it. He will find an event for the test. We will just hit continue. And the next step of the process is going to be to create a database in Notion. So here we will be choosing Notion as app. And here I already have done it, but it will prompt you to give Zapier the API token of your integration. And what does that mean? Now, if we go to Notion, remember, we go to settings and integrations. Here we have our integration. If we click the three dots here, we have this option of copy internal integration token. So this is the number that we are going to copy from here and paste in the pop-up that is going to appear over here. And once we have done that, that is it. It's a one-time thing, and Zapier and Notion will always be connected. So now we will follow our automation and create a database event. Here we have these three options. So we want to create a new item every time that we create a new event in Google Calendar. Then we will choose the Notion account that we are using. And here is the setup. So what we are going to be using is mapping the properties that Google Calendar is giving Zapier and pasting them into our Notion. As you can see here, we have already all the properties that this tasks database that I chose before has. So I want that the name of the task is going to be the same as the name of the event itself. And the other thing that I want is that in my project property, I choose it as event, because this is the way that I'm using to filter events out. And in the due date, I'm going to select this event begins property that comes from Google Calendar, and this is the date of the event. So we have here already the filter for the events and the events that are in the future. This is what this formula is doing. So if we right now fire this automation, we see that here the event is Gwyn and Daniel. We are going to test it and let's see what happens. Okay, so we go back to Notion and here is the event with the name, the project as event, and the due date. So now every time that something is created in my Google Calendar is also going to be created in my Notion. And this applies to my Calendly links, to whoever wants to schedule a meeting with me. So this is amazing. And finally, I will have a centralized view of everything that is going on in my life, tasks and events, that before I was always switching back and forth between Google Calendar and Notion. I want to say also that it is possible to do it the other way around, that whenever I create an event in Notion, that event is going to also be created in Google Calendar, but I'm not doing it. Why? Because right now I'm using the tasks database for also including events, so I can have both in the same calendar view. So if I were to do this, that whenever I create a new property and the project is an event, I'm going to fire this automation, I'm sure that I will have a lot of triggers. And as you have seen before, we pay monthly by the number of triggers. So if I were to do this, I am sure that I will have to pay much more to Zapier, because this automation is going to be triggered by all the new tasks events or not that I'm going to be creating. So I don't want that. Now, I have also tried a different automation that didn't work, and probably it's because the API is still in beta. That was that whenever I update an event in Google Calendar, it also gets updated in Notion. But so far, this hasn't been successful. I always get the same error, and the date is not able to be updated. So if you guys in the comments are able to pull this off, please explain me and I will create a video about it. Another thing that we can use is to connect any social media app. So for this one, let me give you a little bit of background. I already have a database with all my YouTube videos. So what I wanted is that at the end of the process, whenever I already published the video, that the status changes automatically to published, and also that the URL of the YouTube video is auto-populated. Before I was doing this manually. So we can do this with Zapier. We will just hook our YouTube channel, then find which is the entry of the video, and for this I'm missing something that probably is prone to errors. I'm just searching in the Notion database by the title of the video. So this means that the title in YouTube and the title in Notion have to be exactly the same, and this is case sensitive. I haven't found any other more secure way to do this. So once he found the proper entry in the database, the third step of our action will be to update it. And what we need in order to find an entry within a database is the ID number. So every row in Notion will have an ID. And this is the reason why first we find the entry so we can have this ID. We can see that this ID comes from step number 2, is this one over here, okay? And now we can choose what we need to update. So in my case, I will paste the YouTube URL over here. This is one of the properties that YouTube provides in its API. And I'm going to change the status to published. There was another thing that I also wanted to do, and there is no way because of YouTube's API, which was that probably after, 7 days, to write here the number of views, the engagement of the video and everything, to have a little bit more data. But I haven't found all these data from YouTube's API implementation. I was able to do it with email that we are going to see later. And that is it. So now whenever I post a YouTube video, these two things are going to happen. The URL and the status will change to published. Now, for example, if you have an e-commerce business, chances are that the application that you are using for charging your customers is also in Zapier. So therefore, you can use it to bring that customer data into your Notion workspace. So you can have a database with all the clients that you're having, how much they are paying, and you can do calculations of the average cost for each client that you have. So as my online course is in Teachable, I am using Teachable as a trigger, and whenever there is one sale in Teachable, well, this I will add the subscriber to MailChimp. But the interesting thing right now is over here. Before I was using Airtable for this, but now here, whenever there is a sale, I'm going to create that entry in the database. I cannot show you because there is gonna be emails and personal information, but I have checked it and it is perfectly working. Now, one of the pain points that Notion in mobile has always had is that there is not a fast way to input tasks into our system. I have already made some videos with some workarounds, but I think that now I have found something very, very cool thanks to this API. And this is using a task management app that also has an API and using their quick capture feature. So whenever I'm going to create that new task in that app, which in my case is TickTick, that task is also going to be created in Notion. So I'm stealing features from other apps using the API. The implementation is super simple. It is just whenever there is a new task created in TickTick, I'm just going to create a database item in Notion. There is no big mystery here. And here I bring the task name, the due date if there is, and I will set the status as not started, and that's it. So now if I go to my phone, I will just have to click over here and create a new task using TickTick's implementation. Now, one of the features that we have available in Zapier are filters. What does that mean? For example, if we decide to hook Twitter, but we don't want that every tweet that we create goes to Notion, we can create this filter and we can get creative and, for example, filter those tweets that its retweet count is greater than 10. So just those tweets, this means the most popular tweets that we create, are going to pass through this filter and get copied into our database. And of course, in our database, we will be able to send all the retweet data, all the how many people have liked the tweet itself. Now, another implementation that I'm sure that all of you have been waiting is to send emails to Notion for converting them as tasks. And now this is possible. I'm so excited about this. So now we have this trigger in Zapier that is called new inbound email. And what this is doing, Zapier is providing us with an extra email address that we can customize over here. So I have called mine to Notion and this is provided by Zapier. So what I recommend that you do is that you copy this address and you add it as a contact in Google Contacts or whatever contacts app that you are using. So it's very easy to type whenever you are composing an email. So now whenever we send something to this email, we are going to be able to create a task. But I have included a variation because what I want is that, for example, when I forward one email, I want to write over here the title of the task that I want to do. So for being able to make this the name of the task, I have added this extra action that what it's doing is to split the text. And what I'm using to finish the split is the return key. So this means that whenever there is a line break, like we see that there is here, he's going to just split this string of text. By default, this split function is splitting by spaces, so we will have to change it to return. And what this is allowing us is that the output of this action is going to be the name of our task, that in this case is going to be check this email. And we can use this in the third step for the name of the task. Here we are selecting the output from this second step, as I said before. And it's going to be the name of our task. And then the status not started. And I have created a new project that is called email. So I can filter those tasks that come from my emails. And another cool thing that we can do is that we can customize the content of the page itself. You know that in Notion databases, every entry is also its own page. But so far there is one limitation for this, and is that all this content is going to be contained in one only block. And in Notion, the limitation for blocks is that they cannot be bigger than 2000 characters. So if the email is very long, we will just be able to see the first 200 characters of it. I'm sure that in future iterations of this API, this is going to be fixed. And this is the result of this text. This is a text that I did in a previous test. And we can see how here everything is within this same block of text. Okay, so this is the limitation that I was telling you about. And now to finish this showcasing, one of my favorite implementations that is going to be super helpful if you use any email marketing tool. I use MailChimp, and what we can do is to keep track of all the emails that we are sending and its open rate and click-through rate. So the trigger for this automation will be a new campaign in MailChimp. So this means whenever we send one email, this trigger is going to start. And the second action is going to create a database with that item in Notion. So let me show you how this database looks. So I have the campaign, the day sent, the subject line, the number of emails sent in that campaign, the number of opens, the number of clicks, and then some formulas to calculate the open rate and click-through rate. So in this part of the process where I just sent the email, I will be able to already pull here the emails sent, when I sent it, which is the subject line, and the content of the email itself. That is going to go in the page of each of the entries in the database. And then I want to wait for 7 days. Why? Because I want to allow the email some time to gather some data of opens and clicks, so I can then update the entry that we just created in Notion with those two pieces of data. So after 7 days, I'm going to find that campaign so I can have that open and click rate data. So I find it by name, that is I take from the first step, and I find it, and therefore in our fifth step we will find the same entry. This is very important, the same entry that we used before, that we created before, and this comes from the second step, and we have to choose this ID over here. Again, this is the way that Notion has to find each row. And here we are going to update the number of clicks and the number of opens. Now let's test it. This is the first time that I'm going to test this automation, and here we have it. Before I was doing all of this manually to have an Excel with all this data, but now it's amazing that this can be automated. Well, this was just a small glimpse of everything that is possible right now with this fantastic API. And this is just the beta. So imagine what is going to happen when all the developers start developing solutions for standalone apps, so we don't have to rely on Zapier, because in the end, if we plug a lot of applications to Zapier or automate.io, this is going to be a little bit costly. So if you're worried about pricing, just wait a little bit until more apps are connected natively to Notion. And I want to also make you conscious that this is completely a revolution. Notion, when it first started, it started just as pages, so there was no databases. So for me, this will be Notion 1.0. But then they implemented the use of databases, which was what gave Notion such a tremendous power. So now for me, this is Notion 3.0, the API that is going to revolutionize the way that we all work. And I'm so excited to start creating content about this API inside of my course and also inside of Notion to help you all find the best implementations and the best integrations that you can find for your own workflows. So if you have any workflow that you would like to get automated, type it in the comments below and let's workshop how we can do this and how we can make this happen. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope this gave you a ton of ideas, and as always, hasta la próxima.